She woke up on silk sheets, on a yacht in the middle of the open sea, wearing someone else's clothes, with a fever burning through her bones, and absolutely no memory of how she got there. The last thing she remembered was the ice-cold water pulling her under. And the darkness. Then nothing. What she didn't know yet was that the man who saved her life was the most feared man in all of New York, and that the moment his dark eyes landed on her, neither of their lives would ever be the same again. Valerie Hampton had lived her whole life like a woman inside a glass dome, beautiful, protected, untouchable. The daughter of one of Manhattan's most respected families, she had been raised on charity galas, designer silence, and the quiet expectation that she would never have to fight for anything. And she never had. Until tonight. His name was Salvatore Farnese. Italian. Impeccably dressed. Ruthless in the way only men who have earned their power through darkness can be. He owned half of New York in ways that never appeared on any deed. People feared him. Respected him. Obeyed him without question. And he had pulled a half-drowned stranger out of the Atlantic Ocean, not because he was kind, but because something about her, something he couldn't yet name, made him reach down into the dark water and refuse to let go. Valerie's eyes opened slowly, painfully, like someone peeling apart two pieces of wet paper. The world tilted. Swayed. She blinked at the ceiling, dark wood, gold trim, light cascading through panoramic windows that framed nothing but open, endless sea. This was not her apartment. This was not a hotel. The surface beneath her was moving, a slow, rhythmic undulation that confirmed what her dizzy mind was already beginning to piece together. She was on a yacht. A massive one, judging by the size of the suite she was lying in, silk sheets so soft they felt like a whisper, pajamas she had never owned in her life still warm against her feverish skin. She sat up too quickly. The room spun. She grabbed the edge of the king-size bed and held on, her legs trembling beneath her as the dizziness crested and fell in slow waves. Okay. Valerie. Think. Her eyes swept the room. No phone, no bag, no sign of her own clothes. Only the gorgeous, obscene luxury of a space that belonged to someone with money so old it had its own gravity. That's when she saw it, a golden lamp on the bedside table. Crystal details. Probably worth more than her monthly rent. She didn't think. She grabbed it. Tested its weight in both hands. Raised it like a baseball bat, trembling and ridiculous and absolutely not backing down. The door opened. The man who walked in didn't knock all the air out of the room on purpose. He simply existed in it, and that was enough. Tall, Italian suit, black hair slightly disheveled from a long night. Eyes so dark they looked like the bottom of the sea. He stopped mid-step when he saw her. His gaze dropped to the lamp, rose slowly back to her face. And something, not quite a smile, touched the corner of his mouth. "Don't come closer," she said. Her voice, by some miracle, came out steady. "You're going to attack me with decor?" he asked, his accent low, Italian, entirely too calm. "With adrenaline," she corrected, raising the lamp another inch. This time, the amusement on his face was unmistakable, controlled, yes, but there. As if he were holding back a laugh he found genuinely inconvenient. "If I wanted to hurt you," he said, "I wouldn't have saved your life." The words landed like stones dropped into still water, ripples spreading outward in every direction. She lowered the lamp, just slightly. Not because she trusted him, but because her arms were shaking so badly she wasn't sure how much longer she could hold it up. He crossed to the table on the far side of the suite. Set a bottle of water on the edge of the bed, carefully, at a deliberate distance. Then stepped back, maintaining space. As if he understood, without being told, that she needed it. "You were in the ocean," he said. "Unconscious. Hypothermia setting in. I pulled you out. My private physician treated you through the night. You ran a fever." He paused. "Now you're awake. Which is progress." Saturday. She had no real choice. Her legs had already made the decision for her. And it was only then, settling onto the edge of that bed, that she fully registered the silk pajamas against her skin. Beautiful. Expensive. Absolutely not hers. "Who changed me?" she asked, and her voice came out higher than she intended. "I did," he answered. No embarrassment. No apology. Pure, infuriating neutrality. Your clothes were wet and cold. You needed to be warm. I was as professional as possible. He arched one dark eyebrow. Consider it surgery. I promise you, I've seen more and cared less. She stared at him. Something cold and hot moved through her at the same time. Who are you? She asked. A beat. The kind of silence that precedes something irreversible. Salvatore Farnese. The name hit her like a fist to the sternum. She knew that name. Everyone in her world knew that name. The Farnese family. The empire built in shadows. The man who owned more of this city than anyone dared to say out loud. And she was on his yacht. In his pajamas. Holding his lamp. Completely at his mercy, a fact that terrified her far less than it should have. Because the most dangerous thing wasn't that he was feared by everyone in New York. The most dangerous thing was the way he looked at her, like a predator who had been patient for a very long time, and had finally found exactly what he'd been waiting for. She told herself it was survival instinct, the way her pulse raced every time he entered the room. She told herself it was fear. It was easier that way. Because the alternative, that Salvatore Farnese made her feel more alive than any man ever had, was far too dangerous a truth to hold on to. 3 days had passed since Valerie had woken up on his yacht. 3 days in which Salvatore had given her everything she needed: food, warmth, silence, space, and absolutely nothing she'd asked for, including a way home. Every morning she woke up to find the sea stretching in every direction. Every evening she sat across from him at a dinner table that could have seated 12, the two of them eating in a quiet so charged it felt almost violent. He never explained. She never stopped asking. And somehow, in the tension between her questions and his silences, something had begun to grow, something neither of them had named yet, but both of them could feel. Why am I still here? She asked on the third night, setting her fork down with a precision she didn't entirely feel. Because it isn't safe for you to go back yet, he said, without looking up from his wine. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have tonight. She studied him across the candlelight. The hard line of his jaw. The careful stillness of his hands. The way he looked like a man who had taught himself, over many years, to feel nothing, and was recently finding that lesson harder to remember. Someone pushed me, she said quietly. Into that water. Someone pushed me on purpose. Salvatore set his glass down. Slowly. And when he looked at her this time, the controlled distance in his expression had shifted into something she couldn't quite read, something darker, and more careful. I know, he said. The words fell between them like a stone into deep water. She waited for more. He gave her nothing. You know, she repeated. You know who did it. I have a very strong suspicion. And you're not going to tell me. Not yet. She pushed back from the table. She was furious, at him, at the situation, at the way her heart had started doing something unreasonable every time he was in the room. She walked to the edge of the deck and stared at the ocean. The night air was warm and salted, and behind her she heard his chair scrape back. His footsteps, quiet and deliberate, approaching. He stopped beside her. Not touching. Just there. The way a wall is there, solid, silent, oddly reassuring. Someone wants you dead, Valerie, he said, and the sound of her name in his mouth, in that low, careful voice, made something tighten in her chest. I don't know why yet. But I will find out. And until I do, you are safer here than anywhere else. And I'm supposed to just trust you, she asked, not turning to look at him. A man I didn't know existed 4 days ago. You don't have to trust me, he said. You just have to stay alive long enough to decide whether I deserve it. She turned then, and found him closer than she expected, close enough that she could see the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, the very human exhaustion behind the composed authority. He was looking at her with an intensity that felt less like hunger and more like recognition. Like he had been searching for something, without knowing what it looked like, and was only now beginning to understand he had found it. She should have stepped back. She didn't. Later, much later, lying awake in that suite with the sea moving beneath her, she would try to identify the exact moment things had shifted. The exact moment she had stopped being a woman afraid of him and become something far more complicated. She suspected it was that instant on the deck, when neither of them had moved away. When they had both chosen, without words, to remain in the dangerous proximity of each other. But on the fourth morning, something changed everything. She found a note in the pocket of a jacket she'd borrowed, small, folded, written in a handwriting she didn't recognize. And what it said made her blood turn cold. "You were not a random target, Valerie. You were a bet. And Salvatore Farnese is the one who placed it." She stood in the center of that beautiful suite, with the sea golden in the morning light outside the windows and the note trembling slightly between her fingers, and she felt the floor shift beneath her in a way that had nothing to do with the ocean. She had trusted him. Not completely, not yet, but enough. She had let something begin to soften in her chest when he spoke her name. She had stayed. And now she didn't know if that had been the safest decision of her life, or the most catastrophically wrong one. When she looked up, Salvatore was standing in the doorway. His eyes went immediately to the note in her hand. And for the first time since she'd met him, his expression showed something unmistakable. Not guilt. Not cruelty. Something that looked, devastatingly, like regret. Re-engagement hook. There are truths that arrive like sunlight, gradually, warmly, and welcome. And then there are the truths that arrive like the ocean, suddenly, cold, and with the power to take everything from you all at once. Valerie was about to learn which kind of truth Salvatore Farnese was. She didn't confront him immediately. That was the first thing that surprised her about herself. The old Valerie, the sheltered, glass-dome Valerie, would have thrown the note at him and demanded explanations. Instead she folded it carefully, slipped it back into her pocket, and waited. She watched him across breakfast. Watched the way he poured coffee with the same precise calm with which he seemed to do everything. Watched the subtle tension in his jaw, the only sign that he knew she'd found something, and that whatever happened next had already cost him something to carry. "Tell me about the bet," she said, when the silence had stretched long enough to become its own kind of pressure. He set the cup down. He didn't pretend not to know what she meant. "It was a year ago," he said. His voice was steady. Not defensive. "Someone in my circle claimed you, a Hampton, could be made to fall for anyone if the right moves were made. The kind of game men like us used to play. I said it was a disgusting idea and refused to participate. I thought that was the end of it." "But," she asked. "But someone else participated. Someone who thought ruining you would wound your father, and wound the business connections your family holds. You were a target not because of who you are, but because of what your name is worth to others." He met her eyes. "The night you fell into the water, that wasn't an accident. It was someone ensuring you would be silenced before you discovered what had been planned." The quiet that followed was enormous. Valerie stared at the sea. She thought about everything she had been in her life, decorative, sheltered, underestimated. She thought about how easily her world had cracked the moment someone had decided she was useful as a target. "Why did you pull me out?" she asked finally. Honestly. Not the simple answer this time. A long silence. And then, "Because I had been watching you at that party for an hour before you went into the water, and you were the most unguarded person in a room full of people performing everything, laughing too loudly, smiling too precisely. You were just there, real. And then you were gone." He paused. "I don't let real things disappear if I can prevent it." She looked at him, really looked at him, for what felt like the first time. The dangerous man. The feared name. The person who had, without any obligation whatsoever, pulled her out of the dark water and kept her alive and safe and warm. Who had given her space and water and silence and time. Who had carried the weight of what he knew about her danger without burdening her with it too soon. She had come onto this yacht looking for a weapon. She was leaving it, she understood now, finally, carrying something far more complex and far more valuable. The knowledge that protection can come from unexpected places. That the most dangerous-looking thing in the room is not always the thing that will hurt you. And that the walls we build around ourselves to stay safe sometimes keep out exactly the people we need most. He found the person who had done it. His people always did, That was the nature of who he was, the part of him that would never fully soften into something ordinary. It was her own cousin, she learned. Her cousin, who had wanted her father's shares, her father's legacy, and had decided Valerie was an obstacle in silk and pearls. The morning she finally went home, Salvatore stood at the edge of the yacht as it docked, and she stood beside him. The city rose ahead of them, familiar and completely different at the same time. She felt the difference inside herself, something older, quieter, more sure. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," he said, "you go home. You rebuild what was threatened. And you know, now, that there is someone in this city who considers your survival a personal matter." She almost laughed. It came out soft instead, warm, and surprising to both of them. "Is that your version of asking to see me again?" He looked at her, and the almost smile she had first seen across a suite on a swaying sea returned. Only now it was fuller. Only now it was real. "It's my version of promising," he said, "that I intend to." She walked off that yacht a different woman. Not because Salvatore Farnese had saved her life, though he had. Not because she had been afraid and survived it, though that too. But because somewhere between a golden lamp raised in trembling hands and a confession made quietly over morning coffee, Valerie Hampton had discovered something her sheltered life had never taught her. That she was stronger than the glass dome she'd been living in. That real safety is not the absence of danger, it's the discovery of your own capacity to face it. And that love, when it is real, does not arrive with fanfare and perfection. It arrives in the middle of a storm, pulls you out of cold water, and simply refuses to let you disappear. Life lesson. The people most capable of protecting us are sometimes the ones we're most afraid to trust. And the walls we build to feel safe are often the very things that keep us from the love that would make us whole. Real strength isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing to lower the lamp, even when your hands are shaking. If this story moved you, if you felt Valerie's fear, her anger, her slow and reluctant hope, then you already understand why we tell these stories. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss the next chapter of a life that changes everything. Leave a comment below. Did you trust Salvatore from the beginning? Or did it take until the very last line? And share this with someone who needs to be reminded that real love finds a way, even through the darkest water.